What started with artists seeking each other out and forming into groups to picking up generally on social current, as with pop art, became categorised into monikers, an explanation of art's place in history and its subsequent linear direction. What began with a relatively small number of artists steadily became a rush into the 21st. After the introspection of the abstract expressionists and later conceptual and minimalist intellectualising, increasingly art-making became part of the non-avant-garde. If you like, the elements of consumer art were too heavily stacked in favour of art becoming a commercially viable product, following the rules of commerce. People are not necessarily going to buy things they don't like, or find difficult, or at least to have it explained to them. Any foray by artists into areas of difficulty could potentially be a foray into obscurity. In New York during the 60s and especially the 70s, the city became a draw for artists, precisely because of the reality of commerce attached. This is part of the reason why now art, so many decades on, is seen part of a viable career option, the artist as individual brand. Universities' art faculties are steadily full of art students. Art as a term in general no longer holds the same meaning associated with it at the turn of the 19th century. Art is very much a product now, usually representing what we prefer to see, nothing new there, and although there will always be art that questions, provokes thought and treads difficult paths, these are not necessarily as easy to see amidst the cacophony of art and artists encouraged to vie for a place, represented by galleries or at art fairs, their constant trawls spanning the globe. Our institutions, linked with commercial sponsors, built with bigger and more spectacular spaces, also have a trend with blockbuster exhibitions, usually sponsored, given to shock value or crowd-pleasing, theme park-esque events. A policy which during the latter part of the 20th century and into the 21st saw actively promoted exhibitions as must-sees in many of our larger institutions to get ticketed feet through the doors and into the gift shop. Once these institutions were bastions and gatekeepers of history, they are now performing to a criterion set about by consumer-based agendas, not old-school patronage or even individual elite or royal tastes, but an agenda based on the next best thing available. But art is only part of the picture. In a sense, the coming decades will hold a similar dilemma to that of the 1700s and 1800s. We have also had an enlightenment, if you like, in the wave of science and thinking that has been enabled by technology. For instance, we can look into the human brain now with this technology and see how the mind works. How we philosophize is now relevant to how we understand these workings. By the same token, our physical environment is changing. We are globally connected. We have relative freedom to exchange ideas and, for good and also bad, our imaginations. This new connectedness has thrown up similar concerns, as in the 1800s, on how to govern new movement of peoples, not as in the industrial age with influxes into cities, but as energy, ideas travelling in their own right, not only how to govern, but how to create a sense of governability. And within this structure, the representation of artists will continue, but like musicians, artists do not necessarily need a middleman. In the past, art stayed in the proverbial attic or garage. If not officially represented, it was more difficult to be seen and to be seen in the right places. Now the internet is the wall. or at least a wall potentially big enough to warrant a shake-up of ideas in how artists are represented and what is produced within this format. Art is big business. Any missing out on this shift in commercial focus is not going to happen. Along with the changes in how our information is shared, recent recognition of events like colonialism in recorded history, with half the world excluded for various reasons from the Western canon of art, and indeed history itself, for centuries, these things cannot go back now. Change to a genuine newness, and it has been in the air for a long time, it's happening, and on the back of the revolution of technology. Back in the 80s and 90s, postmodernism was bandied about, a reality for sure. But what did it really mean? There never seemed to be a clear definition of what that break with modernism was. Now, ideas around how art is thought of, how it is thought about, how it is made and shown, that break is clear in how art is made, reproduced and sold across the internet. And in a way, it's not post anything.